I'm here too. I did not do the intro music today. I was not able to find it, so so there's that. But welcome to the podcast, everyone. Hey, Vinit. Hey, King Kong. How's it going?
It's going well, Mukunda. How was your weekend?
Good, guys. Yeah, it's been a good couple of weeks. I've been busy with work and a few other travel things, vacation. I'm actually next week. I'm also gone for weekend. I'm in London for some work. But yeah, it's good to see you guys.
Yeah, man, same here. Good to see you guys after, I guess, 3 weeks
Yeah,
almost.
yeah, it's been a good
Three,
amount of time.
3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a pretty, yeah.
No, go ahead. It's been pretty.
I'm saying it's been a pretty exhaustive week for me.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we scheduled this. So this would help me, to vent out a lot of exhaustion. Yeah. Thanks to you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, what'd you say, King Kong?
Uh,
Hello?
yeah, was there an echo?
Not now. I think you're okay now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So last time we left off talking about I do want to apologize to all the listeners, all 5 or 10 of you right now who jumped on last. We were supposed to do one, I think, Monday. It just couldn't work
Yeah.
out given our work schedules. But yeah, so we're doing Sunday as hopefully a regular show from here on in. Maybe next week we'll figure out maybe Saturday or something. I don't know. We'll work that out. But yeah, it's good to see you guys. And
Yes,
I,
sir.
yeah, and last time we left off talking about Shabda Pramana, right? So
Shabda
um,
Pramana.
yeah, and I had people reach out to me to go a little more in depth into it, asking about how can we approach it today? How does it make sense today now that we know all these linguistic connections between like Sanskrit or Indo-European, and does it still hold up? What are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I had a person reached out to me on my YouTube channel. He gave a comment where he was basically saying that, applauding that we did a good job. Plus, he wanted more on the Shabda Pramana. The argument why Vedas are should be accepted as the authority. So regarding that, he thought we could have gone a bit deeper. But other than that, he had a lengthy message where it was all appreciation. So I'm glad that things are being recognized. That's a good
Yeah,
sign. Yeah. Kong, any
Yeah.
comments?
Yeah. So it's really. Is there an echo though?
no, I don't hear
No,
it.
you're audible. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so maybe from my side there's an echo. It's good. It's good to have like positive reviews regarding how we are presenting the different views. Uh, Even from my side, like my friends who have watched or acquaintances, they reached out to me and said that we should delve deeper into how Vedic mantras and injunctions, uh, operate at different levels of situation, realities, or even meaning, right? So I think today we should dive into how the different commentators of the past, as well as of the present, like of Aurobindo's tradition, have divided these levels of understanding of Vedic mantras and rituals.
yeah. I think we'll do that. We'll get to that. I want to share one of um, these comments because I think maybe we can discuss this, right? So I think you guys should be able to see it there. Okay. So this person, Paling Sun, says, thanks for the in-depth session. I was hoping you guys would gone into greater depth in the doctrines of Purushaitvam. I think it's the most important doctrine to Vedanta and deserves a good, strong defense. The validity of Shabda relies on Ajnata, Jnanapa, Gyanapakatva, Abhadatitva, and Doshabhava. The only thing that separates a Purva claim of a Shastra like Deva's incarnation, Jnanapala, from a flying pig is three, which depends on Apurushatvam. The core claim of Advaita is Svaprakasha, but all of the Karmakanda and most metaphysics require Shabda Pramana. Without all of that, Vedanta is almost pointless. E.g., without samsara, what is the point of seeking moksha? Okay, so his main struggle is that it's very difficult to believe literal Apurushatvam, i.e., the actual swaras, varnas, Vedas being literally hard-coded into the universe. When we consider the evidence of Sanskrit evolving from Pi, the mapping between historical events in the Veda, basically it seems difficult to deny that the Vedas are at least somewhat historically contingent. Vivekananda, Radhakrishnan, etc., retreated to considering the timeless spiritual truths of the Veda to Parishatva, but the expression itself to be of the rishis. But doesn't this collapse unique pramanatva of the Veda? They are basically retreating to Buddhist epistemology by inferring the validity of the spiritual truths and saying we should rely on our own pratyaksha, verify our own experience. But by doing this, you lose all epistemic basis for the Viddhis, especially Karmakanda, as well as non-experiential parts of Jnanakanda metaphysics. Okay, so he would like to see us do in-depth engagement with the defenses of Bodhisattva, how they hold up today, and whether we can arrive at conceptions of a Bodhisattva that satisfy without collapsing into Buddhist epistemological standards. All right. What are you guys' thoughts?
I am still going through it.
Okay.
It's a lot. Just give me a minute.
Yeah. Kong, any thoughts?
I mean, in short, the struggle is real, right? Because how do you map historical development of the texts with the Apaurusha doctrine of the rishis, or let's say the Mimamsaka?
Yeah.
I think one way of looking at this would be, so one idea is that the core essence, the meanings, the symbolisms, the experience, the entities to which the hymns are pointing towards, they are all eternal. They are beyond space and time, or at least they're in a spatio-temporal realm which is beyond ours. And the linguistic constructions are contingent to the particular Bronze Age or the Iron Age people who are receiving these through the meditative states or different other states of consciousness. So that's
Okay.
that's the view of, as we said, Vivekananda or Radhakrishnan. But I think a different view also can be taken, that the contingency of Sanskrit is the revelation of the language, or rather the revelation of the poetry in that particular language in a particular time. But it doesn't, it's not mutually exclusive from the fact that the same verbal patterns are eternal and in the mind of Ishvara. Because if Ishvara has knowledge of all realities, past, present, future, then even the Sanskrit utterances, even if they are revealed contingently, are in the form of the knowledge of Ishvara in his or her mind, right? Consciousness rather than mind. So in that way, we can preserve the eternality of a certain form as well as the contingency of the revelation. What do you think? It's just like brainstorming.
Vinit, do you have any thoughts on that? You're muted. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, that would solve the issue. I mean, I'm looking at the exact part where he says my main struggle and confusion is that it is very difficult to believe literal Apurushatvam, the actual swaras and varnas of the Vedas being literally hard coded into the universe. So, as King Kong said, if we grant, and I think this was mentioned from our side in the previous video that we did, that these swaras and varnas are in the exact order, eternally existent in the mind of God or Ishvara, in the divine consciousness. And he sees the Vedas, and this is something that the Acharyas have also argued. I guess Shankara as well, Madhva has definitely argued this, and Ramanuja, I'm sure somewhere must have argued this as well. That where are the Vedas grounded in the exact order? They're grounded in the consciousness of Ishvara. So he sees them. He continuously sees them in the exact order, even though on our earth or on our part of the world or part of the universe, they are, they are bestowed upon the sages. Sometimes, let's say that, let's just suppose, even if they are given non-chronologically, right, that would not make the difference, because they are still there in Ishvara's consciousness, or the way he's seeing it in the exact order that they are supposed to be. So
Right.
even if, yeah,
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, no, so that's the point. I think that should solve.
Well, I mean, there's a couple things to bring up, right? One is, okay, so I think the temporality of the rishis seeing the Veda or receiving the Veda, and its chronological order in even in the canon itself, right? Whether you start with Agni Purohitam, if that it was the first thing they saw or put together, I don't think that's as important, right? Because like that ultimately is a product of, let's say, the compiler. We could say to Vyasa, these mantras came in different ways and different times, but Vyasa compiled them into the form we have today and the Samhita and gave it to us. So there's some already divinity connected to that. I think the more important or the more difficult question that people are considering is, okay, these exact swaras that they're talking about, how are they universal? Because part of the arguments Mimamsas make is, the words that you put together for a cow, like go, these things are universal, right? They're inherent. And every other word for cow in other languages is a bastardization or some sort of mix up with that word cow, right? So how can we say that Sanskrit, in that sense, is the universal language from which all other languages would descend from? And then, because that's their part of the argument, it was like the Vedic language is a Purushaya. The mantras themselves are an expression of that language existing separately in the mind of Brahman. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and just to add, he's also saying that Vedas, given the reasons that you adduced right now, and for another reason that you see historical events mentioned in the Vedas. So one of them, let's take the Dashragya battle, the battle of the ten kings.
Yeah.
So that is also concerning that on one side you want to say Vedas are Apurushaya, eternal, and on the other hand you have these contingent historical events. So is the Dashragya battle, which took place in this kalpa in the exact order, eternal? What's happening? Like, it doesn't
Right.
seem to, well, it is contingent, it's an historical event, but then it is in the Vedas, so that needs an explanation.
I think, Kong, you had provided something a while back from Sayanacharya on this. Was that correct?
Oh, yeah. So the issue arises if you take a hardcore Kumarila Mimamsaka position that by eternality, and I think even Arya Samajis in modern times state this, that by eternality of the Vedas, it means that it cannot refer to any contingent incident of sentient beings or spatiotemporal beings in a particular incident, right? But I mean, my issue with this position is that only if you presuppose that an eternal text must only talk about eternal things, then only this will be a problem, because there's no contradiction, there's no problem if I assume that an eternal vast set of knowledge can have archetypal or patterns of events that repeat in each cycle embedded in it. Now, this is not something that I am I'm not quoting a new or a new view, because
Right.
the Vedantins take this exact step. Even Shayana, being a Vedantin, take this step, that the Dasharadhya battle happens in each cycle. Let's say Kalpa for this manner. We are not going to the Manvantaras or the Chaturvedas, right? And every time the characters of that battle, or the characters like Vishwamitra, Vashishta, Sudasa, are inhabited by different jivas, and these patterns play on. What the Smriti's track is the differences of small events that differs in different kalpas, but the
Right.
basic structure remains the same. Uh, Now, as a critique to the Mimamsa position, I would say that look, the Vedas are also referring to contingent things like the sun rising, the rain falling, the different cycles of universes, and these are contingent and events, right? So even if I take away history per se, the Vedas are still referring to temporal events.
Right.
So that's already embedded in your view. Right. So I
Right.
don't see how it would be like a contradiction, because Sayana as well as Shankara and Ramanuja in the Brahma Sutra Bhashyas say that Brahma sees these patterns in the Vedas at the start of the cycle, and then he takes these jivas and put them into these roles, right? So there would be a new Vashishta, there would be a new Vishwamitra, and they, due to their samskaras, would fight amongst them and hence lead to the Battle of Ten Kings in the next Kalpa, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, so I would take a couple positions on this, right? One would be the pushback I would give is number one is this goes back to actually part of the Mimamsa arguments themselves is no one creates the sound go. No one creates the sound ki, ka, whatever. It doesn't happen. There's no author of creation of these words, these sounds. These sounds exist. We put them together without intention, fundamentally, to create words for the most part, historically speaking, right? Like, or in time and history, like today, we're a bit more, Panini and is not going to be like that. Panini in Sanskrit is intentionality. You take the root and you build a word out, right? So Vedanta or Mimamsas are saying actually these roots themselves, they don't have logical human intentional creation or coherence. They're eternal in the sense of, and they're not authored by humans. They're expressed by humans. So one argument here is the Vedic sounds, the swaras, are built into the nature of the universe. Because, hello, King Kong, are you speaking?
No, is there this sound
No,
from my background?
there was, but it's fine now. So, anyways, so the argument would be that these sounds exist eternally, and these swaras exist eternally because they're actually not created by anyone. Even if you accept, and it's not like I don't accept the Indo-European position. You can even say those sounds existed in the Indo-European. They were not created. The Vedas themselves, even though let's say they descend from, let's say Sanskrit descends from Indo-European language, the language of the Indo-Europeans that came down and created Sanskrit is not human authored. So it becomes a natural connection between the two languages that's eternal. It would not have been any other case, but for the sound like let's say the sound of she or whatever it is to become key, right? It's inherently would have become that. So we can say that these syllables, these varas, these varnas themselves are inherently unauthored, eternal, built into the structure of the universe, and the various seers through even in the European period into the Vedic period and so on and so forth saw these things and were able to bring them down, right? similar to the way we discover the law of gravity, or E equals mc squared. These, is it literally energy equals mass times the speed of light squared? Is that really what it is? I mean, is this equation real? Is it not real? I mean, is it eternal, not eternal? I mean, I'm just using this as a sort of analogy to explain what I mean by the eternality of these syllables of the Vedic language. And then, as to the historic contingency arguments, so one can argue, in some sense, that the Vedic, because they're eternal, pre-human, whatever, they have in their existence moments of time that are always will be present, right? For example, this Dasaraja war, maybe it also represents, and this will get into these concepts of Adibautik, Adidevit, Adhyatmik, a spiritual truth that exists, but it also becomes itself a historical event, right? Like one can say, for example, the relationship Indra, Vritra, Vishnu, that is a cosmological, forever eternal truth, plays out in the Vedas as a particular Indra fighting a particular Vritra using particular Vishnu, and it plays out again in the Mahabharata with Krishna and Arjuna, and the various Kaurava fight, and then it plays out again in some other time, right? These truths of the Vedic corpus are playing out historically in historical periods over and over again. So there's that element. And I think finally, I would say the other historic point to this would be history itself. Oh, actually, I don't forget. So you guys want to respond to those points?
Yeah, this the last thing that you said about, so Indra is a position, Surya is a position. So you have these positions being occupied by different personalities in each kalpa. In the same way, we could say that all these historical events have their own prototype or archetype, and they do play out in the historical world, but each time the character changes, as King Kong also pointed that out. So this could be one way of responding, but then something else that uh, I mean, before I move forward with that, Kong, you should respond to Mukunda's points as well.
Yeah, I mean, so let's take a very bare minimum
Also,
position that the Vedas is not at least.
sorry, I'm cutting you off in between. My bad. I'm just saying that before. I mean, you could take this point as well, which was there in the comments. So he's trying to say that suppose a rishi is bestowed with this particular mantra or with this particular procedure to carry out a particular yajna. While he is giving that out, the Vedas mention a lot of tertiary or a lot of secondary things that he does. Uh, are they also eternal? So let's say Gargi and Yagyavalka are having this conversation. The conversation about Brahman is eternal, right? What is being said about Brahman or Atma, that is eternal. That is the spiritual truth. But let's say the text mentions that Gargi is seated in this particular way, or Yagyavalka is lying down on his bed, right? Or so all these stuff, these secondary, tertiary stuff, are they also eternal because they happen to occur in the Vedas? This is a part of what he's also trying to say.
Okay,
Or
fair.
only the spiritual, yeah, or only the spiritual truths are eternal.
Right. I mean, so it depends upon which school you are coming from, but
Well, I don't think it matters on the school. I think it's an important question here because, and also let me respond back from my position, or not necessarily what I hold yet, but it's an argument that's sitting in my head, is Gargi, Yagyavalka are placeholders. So again, these terms are, one can view them as a particular Gargi, a particular Yagyavalka, or as an internal Gargi Yagyavalka, which people take those roles in. Like this conversation about Brahman will occur in every time cycle, right? So whoever that sits in that position of Gargi asking that question and Yagavata asking that question and seated in a certain way is playing out that motif, right? The way people talk about hero's journey. Let's say that. Let's just use that idea, right? We have the cycle of a hero's journey. The question is that journey a metaphysical truth and reality that plays out in all stories? Because ultimately, what people are trying to say was when they do comparative analysis of texts or of even science or any of this stuff is what is the universal thing that applies across the board here? Now, I think what the Vedic position is, we'll give you the universal, and everything that comes from that is going to be the derivative, secondary, but like mirror, the bimba pratibimba kind of relationship, right? The Vedas themselves will be the mirror, right? They'll be the bimba. All historical contingencies that connect to the Veda are the pratibimba, right? The reflection. They're always reflecting the Vedic. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah. So I just want to do a thought experiment, right?
Yeah.
Let's take the Arya Samaji view, right? That there are no historical incidents, there are no historical entities within the Vedic corpus, right? It's a newer kind of interpretation on the Mimamsaka idea, but it's more or less the same. So my question to the person who's attributing this idea of Aparashyatva is that the Vedas are still talking about entities or processes that are going on, that are repeating, that are temporal bound, that will happen in the next cycle. So if the sun rises and the Vedas are talking about the rising of the sun, then it's pretty sure that in the next kalpa the sun would be different.
Right.
Well, verily the sun wouldn't be a personality, but it certainly would be a particular sun in the genus of universal suns. Right? If that be the case with physical bhautika elements, why can't that be the case with the personalities?
Right.
Right? And again, another thing that we are assuming is that for the Vedas to talk about an incident that might not repeat in each kalpa, it too has to be temporal. It's not necessary. An eternal script or an eternal set of knowledge can do talk about certain incidents that are not repeating every day.
Right.
Right? And as Ishvara is infinite, and infinite kalpas and infinite brahmandas have transpired and will transpire, we can for sure say that these archetypal events of interactions between these different beings embodying different characteristics will go on, right? And within this continuance of these different archetypal drama in samsara, in the play of samsara, there can always be differences. Maybe in one kalpa, Yajnavalkya asks a different question or responds in a slightly different way, right? But the skeletal structure of that pastime or the drama or that lila is same, right? So the unit. So rather than it's change, thinking that the particularities change, we should think that the archetypal sets of relation is like a genus that is eternal, and jivas embody, or jivas or universals or natural phenomena embody those symbols, those power structures, and thus different kalpas or different manvantara incidents happen.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because, again, the Mimamsa's purpose isn't the historicity, right? Historicity is a contingent, secondary, tertiary consideration for Mimamsas, right? Like today, because we are very historically oriented, right? We think about everything through the lens of historical reality and historical truths, or did this happen and did it happen this way? That our focus ends up being on that, not on is this is this reflecting some Arthavada? Is this reflecting something about the Veda, the ritual itself? No, we're like, is this real? Did this happen? Right? Or by here real, I mean, obviously a sense of historical reality, not real, or any of those terms. So I think Mimamsas would generally respond, and I think modern Mimamsas would say something to the nature of, sure, there's historical event could have happened. Let's say it did. The Vedas referring to Sudas and these people, but does that mean just because the Vedic hymn was seen and expressed in a historical moment that it doesn't that it invalidates the Veda itself, or is it saying that all instances of the Veda appearing or being not composed but seen, we could even say composed, right? Composed, seen, heard, whatever, are going to be historical. So there's going to be elements in which the rishis take that truth, the words, the sounds, and put them together in a way that reflects the historical reality, but the historical reality is secondary, tertiary to the artha or to the purpose or the meaning of the Veda, right? What is the ritual importance here? What is the role of Sudas and Vishishta in calling down Indra? Is that the import of it, or is it actually, these kings battled these other kings and this one? No, I think the import is again playing to the nature of, I'd say, the Vritra Vritra Indra battle, and that motif playing out against with Sudas. Vishishta calls in Indra, much like it plays the role of destroying the 10 kings for Sudas in the same way he would destroy the clouds to release the rains. And now, obviously, some people could respond to me and say, "Hey, man, you're just making up these interpretations." And fair enough, it could be the case that I am, but because I don't know Sanskrit to the level to be a Mimamsa scholar to break down the words, but I can almost guess someone with that knowledge could put together the historical understanding. I mean, not historical, but the metaphysical understanding.
I mean, Mukunda,
Yeah.
like if looking at Saraswati can invoke within the mind of Madhuchanda's Vishwamitra's son, a mantra or richa for Saraswati, I do think that even historical events like wars, debates, can also invoke a particular emotion of awe, of divine, when the rishi is within that context, right? I mean, just imagine Vashishta in a warfare, right? And then there's this epiphany of him that's happening, that Indra is helping us or something like that, and he composes it, right? Whether at that time or later, however you see. And within the meta view of Ishvara has these archetypal events in his pocket, right, so to speak, that he repeats in different kalpas with certain twist to bring out these emotions, qualitative states, right? Because the emotion of looking at the sunrise and praying to Savitar is different from the emotion of Pururava and Urvashi debating over a heartbreak and having a certain kind of philosophical idea of love and how it operates, right?
Right.
So as Vedas have its gambit is sorry, no, not gambit. It's like the vastness of the Veda is trying to gather all kind of emotions. And interestingly, I said gambit. It's also there's a hymn about gambling, right?
Yeah.
So it is also a contingent event, right? So the Vedas try to paint as much of emotion and qualitative states of the divine from the mundane to the most high, right? So it repeating different times and being connected to historical events, I don't see it as a tension between its eternality.
Well, let's put it this way too. And sorry, Vinny, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I have a suggestion. So, what if we say that whatever that has been historically recorded and has also appeared in the Vedas, let's just say that this is actually coded in the universe. So we have the concept of kalpas. If you take a look at two Ramayanas or Mahabharatas or any two events that have been mentioned in the scriptures, try to see the variation of it being mentioned in another kalpa, you would see 99% of them are exactly the same. The variation is one, like there would be a percent difference, that's all. So in the same way we could say that the Dashragya battle that happened, because remember in the Vedas it comes where God, the supreme being, is commanding probably Brahma or someone, Brahma I guess, where he says yeah, it is in the Vedas, it is also in Bhagavatam as well, where he says create the universe exactly like how it was created in previous kalpa.
Right.
So all the historical events are, then we can accept that they are coded in the universe, in a sense that this is every time the Dashragya battle happens, it happens exactly like that. And if it happens exactly like that, then the sense of historicity and contingency kind of goes away, because uh, there is a prototype or the archetype of the Dashragya battle, how it would happen, already coded in the universe. What is being instantiated cannot and would not differ much, right? So in each kalpa it happens in the exact same way.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's.
So I
Go
just
ahead.
I just wanted to add something to Vinit's statement. If the viewers want to know which mantra it is, because generally there's this idea that Rig Veda doesn't talk about or doesn't have a seed idea of cyclical creations. This mantra is the penultimate hymn of the 10th mandala. I think it's 191. It's just the second last hymn, and the hymn goes a Dhata, which means Prajapati or Brahman Ishvara, created the sun and moon, yatha purva kalpayat, just like before,
Yes.
right? So there's like, a lot of people try to
I
translate
think the
that,
full
no,
mantra
maybe
is.
yatha purva means in the
Yeah.
beginning, but no, yatha purva means as it was before. So there's a new recycling of these material ingredients
Yeah,
by Prajapati,
I think
right?
the mantra starts with Ritam cha Satyam cha Abhijat Tapo so Ajayata
Yes.
Tato Ratra Jayata, Tataha Samudro Arnavaha,
Yeah.
Samudra Arnava, I forget, yeah, but it does end with Data Yatha Purva Makalpayan. And so it's interesting because there is that germ, now if you look at it from a historical, like, philological standard, one can take the argument that this is the kernels of reincarnation or rebirth or cyclical nature of the universe, and because you don't find direct evidence of something like that until you get to the Upanishads, and the cycle of rebirth and returning back is played into, I think it's in Chandogya. But that being said, coming to the point here, and I think then we can move on to the Adibhautik, Adidevik, and so on. I think the argument fundamentally for me is going to be that the Vedic view, or the Mimamsa view on the Upanishadva is very, very defensible from the perspective of saying that the Veda, the Varna, the Swaras, all these things are built in. They're not human authored. They're not created by human beings. Yes, they're maintained in some tradition, but they exist in a realm much like, let's say Ramanujan came up with his proofs. Are they his proofs? Did he create them? Did he manifest them, or did they exist because they're built into the nature of things, and he saw them? And even is his mathematical proof that he wrote down, is that eternal, right? Or is that foundational? I think those arguments are the strongest to me. And I think the nature of cyclical, or the let's say the prototype sitting in the Vedic corpus and then playing out historically in repeated time, kalpa as well, so on, is a pretty decently strong argument if you accept the presuppositions of the tradition itself, saying that, not just tradition but the text saying that there's rebirth, reincarnation. Now, the important thing is there is a little bit of circularity here, because the only way we can know rebirth, the only way we can know of cyclical time is the Vedic texts or
Yeah.
the Upanishads or the Itihasas, right? So if we look into them, that's how we can know. But the argument fundamentally is, for Mom says, is ultimately the Vedas are authoritative because they're not human, because they're not created by humans. Fundamentally, right? All other texts we know of, are human created. The Bodha texts are Buddha Vachana. He's not saying he is pulling it from. No, these are his. He's the author, right? Well, the Vedic statements are no. There's no author here. This is the nature of the world, universe, whatever, and therefore you could trust it when it comes to these things, right? So again, even the Pramana methodology is interesting, because when you apply it within the Vedic texts themselves, Pratyaksha still holds, because ultimately the Vedic texts are something that is seen, heard, or experienced by the rishis, and then it's passed down to us in a way that is preserved, right?
Yep, 100%. Where is Kong?
He's probably had some internet issue,
Yeah,
and he'll come back.
be back.
Yeah.
He'll be back. So yeah, I think this as a response should suffice. I guess. Right.
So I mean, yeah, if anyone in our audience has questions or comments, please do post them on X or YouTube, or if you have something, maybe you can message me, and if I know who you are, you can jump on and ask a question or engage with this particular issue. We're open to that too. So guys, all right. So I think Kong will be back shortly, but I think then that we should kind of move on now to, I think, discussing the nature between Shruti and Smriti, right? Because we do have that demarcation, right? We've historically been talking about the Veda in relationship to Pratyaksha Anumana. Now, are Shrutis holding similar relationship with Pratyaksha Anumana or not? What are your thoughts?
Similar relationship, in a sense that could you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, what I mean is, is Smriti equal? No, not necessarily equal, but can be used as a pramana for the purposes of adrishta stuff, or stuff around the nature of Brahman, like the way that, or dharma itself.
Yeah.
Can it?
Very, very, very important question. So, Arya Samaj, I mean, I'll start with Arya Samaj just to give a context. I think in the beginning of 18th or 19th century, you have this attack that comes from the Arya Samajas. They want to go back to the Shrutis. Something similar to this you see in the Abrahamic faith, especially in Islam, where there's an emphasis on going back to the Sunnah, going back to the Quran. So something like that they wanted to do, and for them the Smritis, the Puranas,
Sola Scriptura kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So all these other scriptures like the Puranas, the Smritis, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, they had, as per them, they did not share the same kind of authority with the Vedas, which is all right, but even in their own importance, they were not sufficient to give you the knowledge of the unseen or the transcendental or Brahman. So they had them completely packed up and thrown in the bin of myth, mythology, or stuff like that, and their entire focus shifted to the Vedas. This is contrary. This stands in sheer contrast to the long-standing tradition of Hinduism, where Smritis, Puranas, Mahabharata, and Ramayana have been traditionally entertained the same status, almost same status as the Vedas. You could see some of the quotes in the Mahabharata itself, where it is written that when the gods, you could correct me on the specificities, but it goes similar, something like when they were weighed together, Mahabharata and Vedas, Mahabharata came out on top. So it was then designated as the fifth Veda.
Yeah.
And if you take a look at the Brahmanas are part of the Vedas. the Brahmanas themselves mention or give authority to these Puranas, to Smritis, and to Mahabharata, and they call them collectively as Pancham Veda. So, contrary to what these, you have these new trends or new strands where they're trying to go back to the Vedas as if Vedas hold some kind of uh, uh, purity which these texts do not have. Uh, the tradition is completely against this view. The tradition is of the view that all the texts that are mentioned in the Vedas, be it mind you, the Puranas are mentioned in the Vedas, Mahabharata is mentioned in the Vedas, right? As itihas, not as
Yeah.
Mahabharata, but as itihas. So Puranas are mentioned, itihasas are mentioned. If they are mentioned in the Vedas themselves have given authority to these texts and have called them as Pancham Veda. There shouldn't be any doubt regarding whether they can lead you to Brahman, whether they can lead you to the unseen, whether they are on par with other Pramanas or not. In fact, if you read Madhva, when he what he means by scriptures, when he uses the word scripture, let's say when he uses the word Shastra, he does not only mean Vedas. When he says Shastra, let's say it is written in Shastra, right? Or it is written in the Revelation. So by these words, whatever the corresponding word of revelation is in Sanskrit, whenever he quotes like that, it is
Mhm.
mentioned in the Shastras. He mean all the canons, including the Puranas, including the Mahabharata, Ramayana, Puranas, right? So none of these texts should be exempted from the canon, from the Vedic canon. So Vedas, you could say that Vedas extend their authority to these texts. Yeah.
Yeah. King
In,
Kong.
yeah. In my
Thoughts on
view,
that?
they are go on.
No, you go ahead. Yeah, finish your
No, no,
point.
I'm just finishing that. In my view, they are as authoritative as Vedas, uh, on par with the Vedas. There's a reason why they are called Pancham Vedas. And let's take, if you allow, let's take another example. So the Vaishnavas would be aware of this. Whenever we read Bhagavatam, whenever we try to understand Bhagavatam through an acharya, the first thing we are told is it is a commentary on the Brahma Sutras, right? So to anyone who is doubting the Puranas, uh, it is literally called the commentary on the Brahma Sutra. Brahma Sutra is the text which summarizes the entire Brahma Gyan, right? But then there is a, there is a supplementary text to it, which is Srimad Bhagavatam, which acts as a commentary to it. So how come? I mean, it's absurd to say that we accept the sutras, we accept the Upanishads, but their elaboration in the form of the Puranas we are not going to accept. To me, that's not acceptable, especially if the tradition already has authorized these texts as authority.
Right. Right. Which is I think, I have some thoughts on that, but I want the King Kong to go. King Kong, go ahead. Kong, you there?
You're
All right.
muted if you're speaking.
Yeah, you're muted if you're there. Okay. I'll let him come back. But go ahead. Do you have something to say, Vinny?
Just to elaborate a bit more on that. So, having said that, we aren't saying. I mean, me and you or Kong, we aren't saying that uh, there is no hierarchy of any sort. So, the Vedas, although it gives authority to these texts can go on uh, in a dialogue with the Vedas, or the Vedas can have a dialogue with these texts where
Right.
if something appears in the Puranas that's not in the Vedas, or not in the Vedas, but let's say something that is in the Puranas that goes against what is in the Vedas, then there it is internal to the hermeneutics where it is, I think, in the Mimamsaka text, it is written or laid out clearly that in that case we have to give precedence to the Vedas, right? So, there's a hierarchy of precedence, let's say,
Yeah.
where what would come to override what text in a particular circumstance or in a particular situation.
I think the idea of overriding only applies when there's conflict, right? If the Vedic text conflicts with let's say Puranic or Itihasic text, meaning verse, whatever, or then there would be this hierarchical breakdown. If there's not, if you know, if the Itihasa is talking about something the Vedic text isn't talking about, then the Itihasa or Purana is given the status of the Veda for those purposes, right? So the entire corpus of Shabda. Now, this is where I think the Vedantins do a different take than the Mimamsakas, because they do accord the Itihasa Puranas status of the Veda when it comes to things like um what's it called, anything about Brahman, right, or anything about the nature of reality. So there is that element, and even history at that point, because they don't have the direct evidence of history, pratiksha, whatever it is, right? So they will say itihasa, right? This happened, and the tradition preserves that this happened, which is Ramayana, Mahabharata, maybe the stories in the Puranas and the Brahmanas. They're all considered to be true or real, maybe not historically, but they're considered true or real. And I think this is where it's very interesting, because all the Shabda, all Puranas, all Itihasa, Dharmashastra, the entire corpus is considered to be of validity for the purposes of a Pramana. Right?
Yes. Yep. I think Kong, which are you there? I think he's back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. There's a constant glitch that's going on for some reason today. So apologies for that. Uh, I want to, so we are talking about the Puranas and how it's driving its validity from the Vedic corpus. And one thing that I wanted to add to Vinit's point is a lot of Puranic stories, if we read them properly, are based on the narratives that are in the Brahmanas, right? So, for example, the incident of Varaha lifting Bhumi is in the Brahmanas. A lot of the story of Matsya, we find this in Shatapatha Brahmana, right? We see this in the Puranas, Tripura, and so on and so forth, right? So the Puranas are basically, as Vinit said, that when the Devas uh, weighed the corpus of the Mahabharata and the corpus of the Vedas, Mahabharata was heavier. And Mahabharata being the mother Purana, the Ur Purana, from which all the Puranas derive their validity, their sources, and literally so, a lot of Puranas does take parts of Mahabharata and place them within their structure. So we do see that it's nothing but roots that are coming out from, or branches that are coming out bearing fruits in different forms of poetry and genres of literature from the Vedas. And the idea now is, in Kumarila, I was reading Kumarila's Tantravartika, taking a Mimamsaka point of view. Kumarila is like, well, they're Arthavada, right? And then someone's like, do you really think that such huge passages of text is for Arthavada? And he's like, yes, because a lot of these stories of Velar, description of, let's say, Gandhamadana Parvat, where probably a scene from Kartikeya's birth is going to be played out. It's how beautiful the trees are and all. These are trying to evoke different emotions, right? Because the entire goal of the Itihasa Purana is trying to point towards Yagya, and Yagya, right? And I mean, I feel Kumarila takes it a bit far, right? But I don't necessarily see that the ritual is somehow apart from the Puranas. Rather, the Puranas restructure the ritual in the narratives or in different manners. Because let's not forget, the Puranas also deal with a lot of rituals, temple ritual, vratas and stuff. And for Kumarila, this might be, different from the Srauta rites. But within the horizon of the greater Vedantin framework, this is nothing but the restructuring or keeping the yajna in the context of the social order or the cultural or the temporal order and giving it a new flavor, right? So yeah, that's how I see how the Puranas connect with the Vedas. I mean, it's much more deeper, but Mukunda, Vinit, if you wanna.
Vineet, any comment?
No, yeah, pretty much. I think he has said what we already discussed. Apart from that, what else can be mentioned? So let me think. Like Mukunda, you could go forward, but
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
think.
Well, you take a second. So I think yes. So the way, and this is actually goes into curtailing into what we want to just also discuss in this conversation. This idea of, you know, if you take the position that the Mimamsas do, right, at some level, which is the Veda itself's purpose is the ritual. Okay, ritual. Let's say that. Now, the internal tradition of the Veda themselves are taking that these rituals are being internalized in the Upanishads, right? The Upanishad authors, the rishis, seeing the Upanishad, or those things, are internalizing the Veda from the ritual, external ritual, to the internal ritual, right? So, for example, the Vedic texts talk about the three fires, right? The three fires are always maintained, which is one, the universal fire, the sun, let's say. Second is the fire external, which is your fire in your yagya, or your your household fire, or the Vedic yagya. I mean, that's a fire. And the third fire is the internal fire, right? So these three fires are talked about in the Vedas themselves, and the ritual that's being done outside becomes the ritual that becomes inside, that becomes the ritual that becomes the universe, right? So this whole concept of the ritual being complete and succinct in itself in relation to all three elements of these different views, right. So for example, going to our ideas, right, let's talk about this at some level. There's Adi Devik. So I'll bring up this little thing so we can discuss, because I think this will be helpful going forward, for
There's
people
a
to see.
slide I've sent it
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah. That's the one I'm bringing up. Let's do that quick. Okay. Let me share this in, I think, current format. Files corrupted, it says. 1 second. I'm going to re-download it. All right.
Yeah, meanwhile, can I add just a point?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So Adi Dhaivika, Adi Bhautika, Adhyatmika, these would be like the three broad strokes of seeing it. But then, we must realize that there are other levels of zooming in
Yeah.
and seeing the level of meaning. And sometimes a lot of, these boundaries are very fuzzy. They kind of, lead you eventually to the other level, and meaningfully so, purposefully so.
Right. Hold on. Let me open this. Why is it not opening the JPEG? Can you want to try to open it on your end, or let me see if I can in Paint. Oh, that's not opening at all. Hey, why don't you go ahead? Oh, actually, I have it here. I can share it like this. Give me a sec here. All right. All right, guys. One. Oh. Okay. Okay. Can we almost see here? 1 second. And share. Boom. Okay. So this is the image that King Kong has made for us. So thanks, Kong, for that. All right. So let's go through this real quick, right? So if you say, so these are interpretive frameworks built into the Shastras themselves, right? You will find these ideas actually in the Upanishads. Let me see my notes here real quick. I have it somewhere. The Gita talks about it.
Even Ishvara Krishna's Sankhya Karika discusses the threefold division, and it's
Yeah.
usually linked with how different suffering or cause of dukkha arises from these three domains of psychological natural, and the Daiva or the celestial.
Yeah. So let's see here. There's, I think Gita also has a passage here on this. Um, okay, let me see here. Yeah, Adi Bhutam Ksharo Bhava Purushas Cha Daivatam Adi Yajno Aham Evaitra Dehe Deha Pratham Vara, right? So basically, this is the concept of the Adi Bautic being the material, the Adi Devic being the universal, and the Adi Yajnik being in the sense of adhyatmic is used in this context, but is also used in the context of the ritual itself, right? The ritual of the self, right? And this is Bhagavad Gita chapter 8, verse 4. So they're these ideas are there. They're also built into the Brihadaranyaka Upanishads. I think Chandogya, if I'm not, or even the Taittiriya, about the nature of. So the first one is the Brihadaranyaka talks about this because they connect the. I guess if I remember correctly, Ashwamedha sacrifice.
Yes, the
Yes.
very beginning chapter of the Brihadaranyaka is Tashrameda internalized as well as universalized.
Correct. Right. So the ritual itself, which is becomes adibautic, right, which is about beings, right? The ritual, the action itself, the ritual becomes adidevic, which is for the universe and all that, and then the adhyatmic is connected because adi yagnik and adi bautic, at some level, are somewhat related because they're to do with the world around us, right? So yeah, so the first, so for our watchers, listeners, whatever, so as this example shows, is adi bautic, which is the Vedic story, hymn, verse can be first looked upon by the material realm, right? What is this? Is it like when we say, the sun, the sun is the eye in the sky, right? Or Agni is the fire, Agni le purohitam, that we're talking about the Agni in front of us, right? The physical manifestation that exists in front of us as part of the ritual. That's one element. The second element is going to be like that same in the Rig Vedic or Rik in this context also has the meaning of Adi Devic, right? Which is it referring to the fire in front of you or the universal fire? That is the Agni, the Devata, Agni, the at the cosmic level. Is it referring to that? Thirdly, is like how is it playing out? Well, 3 and 1 are connected, right? How it's done in the ritual context, and the fourth is what is the fire internally to you, right? Your consciousness, right? So one refers to physical fire. The second refers to this cosmic fire, this metaphysical. Maybe metaphysical, and finally the fourth, or third in our case, is going to be connected to the inner fire, the not just psychology but consciousness at its core, right? So these different interpretations, or I mean, they're what's known as exegesis and hermeneutics. It's a framework to understand how to read the text. And this, I think, is a unique element within the Hindu tradition, particularly that the Abrahamic traditions do not possess internal to their own texts, right? Now, you do have later on, like, that happening within the framework of the Bible, the Quran, but for the most part, they're taken literally, right? These texts are to be viewed literally within the text themselves. Yeah, you guys have thoughts?
So, I mean, most of the structure of how the hermeneutics work you have explained. As So Adi Daivika would mean pertaining to the Daiva realm, Adi Bhautika pertaining to the physical realm, Adi Yajnika Adi means to or pertaining to the realm of the sacrifice, and Adhyatma, Adi Atman, right, to the self or the psychological self, or your ego construct and what's going on. Now, we see, let's say, for example, let's take the idea of Agni, as you said, Agni being the sacrificial fire, Agni being the natural fire, Agni being the lightning in the sky, Agni being the fire in the sun. right? Uh, the being that controls these Agni, these fires, these natural phenomena is the entity, the celestial being Agni, right? And that same entity's imprint or the imprint of that principle within your psyche is the adhyatmika, right? It's the fire of your knowledge, or in a certain way, it's even your the digestion fire that Krishna talks about, right? I am Vaishvanara, seated in the stomach of all beings, eating. It is both Adibhautika, also in a certain sense Adhyatmika, when that fire is the fire of your enlightenment, or your speech as fire, right? Because certain times you have deities governing over certain body parts, and with that also the elements to which it is connected and the functionality. So Agni is connected with speech, and then it also sometimes goes to the dimension of Brahman. So Agni also means Vaishvanara, as in the Brahma Sutras, Ramanuja, Madhva, Shankara takes a lot of times Vayu, Prana, Agni, referring to Brahman, right?
Right.
He being the very principle on which all these fires, celestial, terrestrial fires depend upon. He is the fire of all fires. He's the essence of fire, right? As Krishna says, I am the sweetness of the water, the energy of the sun. And we can play this, for example, with Indra and Vritra, right? So in the physical realm, Vritra is the cloud, Indra is the sun or the lightning. In the realm of the archetypes, Indra is the lord of the devas, the king of the Adityas, the solar beings. Vritra is the obstacle, coming from the root re, to
Right.
hold on, to capture, right? And then in the adhyatmika level of things, as you know, Aurobindo also stressed upon it. It's your mind as Indra, cleaving apart Vritra or Vala and releasing the dawn cows, the rays of enlightenment. And interestingly, we can say that Vishnu is also placed in conjunction to these events, right? So you, as the jiva, succeeds as Indra in the realm of the adhyatmika, as you are helped or empowered by the Atman, Paramatman, Vishnu, right? So, and this can also play out beautifully in the Itihasas, as we see Arjuna and Krishna, Nara and Narayana, Jiva and Purusha, right? Or even and I think we can, point this out, that in the Vedas we have the two birds sitting
Mhm.
on the same tree. One is dejected, one eats, one jumps, and the other is like this shining, glorious being. And then the bird realizes, I am that, right? So we see that how this pattern of narratable structure permeates through these different levels. One short point I want to say, that there's a certain dichotomy which we see in Orientalists, and a lot of rudimentary, crude understanding of the Vedas, that they worship natural phenomena, but it's just looking at one point and then just not going beyond it, because as the devas permeate all realities, even when the word for Indra is being referring to the sun, or the firmament, or Vishnu is being referring to the orb of the sun, it doesn't preclude or it doesn't exclude the deity also, because the physical phenomena is nothing but an expansion of the energies of the deities, or Ishvara, or a Sharira, if we take the Vishishtadvait in language, right? So we can see how this thing happens together, right? So we can think of the natural phenomena as bodies, as embodied presences of these entities, not only within the macrocosm, but within also our microcosm.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Vinit, what do you think?
Yeah, a related point to this, you guys could take it up, or a doubt perhaps I would like to ask here and take a learner's seat, because this is not my part of expertise.
Sure.
So I want to know about this. You have this mentioned in the, and apologies if this digresses a bit, but it is related. You have this cosmology of the Puranas that are given. So there the lokas are mentioned, and even the mandala, the bhumandala itself is divided in different constituents, which you do not see with your physical eyes. Pratyaksha does not give you any evidence for them. but then they are in the in the Puranas, and I guess maybe in the Brahmanas or somewhere else. So the point being, can we, and me and King Kong had a discussion on this for a lot of years now. Can we interpret those descriptions of the Bhumandala, which seem to be not exactly aligning well with our understanding of this our geographical understanding of Earth itself? So, can we say that that description is not on Adi Bhautika level, but uh, from either of the three, Adi Devika or Adhyatmika or the other?
Go ahead, King Kong.
Yeah, Mukunda, I would also love your viewpoints on that. So
I will.
these are a couple of thoughts that I have gathered through my studying or discussing with people.
And also before that, if King Kong could take the Puru Paksha and maybe present the initial point of the ambiguity around it better than what I did.
Oh, certainly, certainly. So, in the in the Vedas, we don't see much of elaborate cosmology, right? The cosmology changes in different places. There are sparse mention. There's certainly mention of lokas, right? There are different realms where these different deities, there are these different entities that inhabit. So if you do a certain yagya, you go to Agni's realm and you become part of his team. If you go do a certain yagya or do certain practice, you go to Indra's realm, so on and so forth. We see this development particularly in the Mahabharata and then in the Puranas. Now, what's the problem? The problem is that two things. Firstly, the description of the celestial planets and their distances from the Earth, or Bhumandala disk rather more specifically, is different than what we see in our Pratyaksha, in our empiricism. There are mention of different realms within the Bhumandala where there are no influence of the yugas. There are no influence of Kali, Satya, Treta, or there are golden shining beings. One of it is Shweta Deepa, where Narada goes in Mahabharata, where Vishnu stays, and this is again in Bhumandala. There are oceans of exotic substances like wine, curd, ghee, milk, and so on and so forth. Now, how do we see this? As I think we should remember the previous conversation we had, that there are, 1,000 Shruti Vakyas can't override the empirical knowledge in the realm of empiricism, in the realm of Pratyaksha, right? So it's certainly the case that we see that the physical entities around us, we can't see it with our physical eyes. Even Puri Shankaracharya had this video where he talks about that these are not present or these are not cognizable by your physical eyes. Now, one of the precedents why this is so, because in the Mahabharata, and this is what I think, when Sanjaya is telling Dhritarashtra the book of wars, right, it's starting from Bhishma Parva, Vyasa gives him Divya Chakshu, or the divine vision, right? And before the starting of the war, there's this description of the entire Bhumandala and the Bharatavarsha. Now, it's certainly the case that Vishwarupa, which even Sanjaya saw, or other divine interventions within the battlefield, which was not seen by the normal eye, was cognized by Sanjaya. So, in that sense, we can also say that Sanjaya had that ability to perceive the Daiva realm of things, right? An interesting take that I would also point from the astronomer's perspective. This is a very modern like modern in comparison to the entire tradition, but you certainly see its seeds in Aryabhatta and other astronomers. So in the 1700s, I think the astronomer Parameshwara, as well as I'm forgetting the name of the astronomical treatise. I think it's Nyaya Siddharajana or something. I will post it later. There he talks about the fact that a lot of these descriptions are also pertaining to different yugas and kalpas. And as much as it matches with our empirical view, we must keep it, right? We don't need to force fit it, the astronomer is saying, because the sages can talk about different levels. And he's also very flexible in the sense that certain descriptions in certain Puranas or astronomical treatises can be corrupted, but overall the idea is there. And he also takes the view that there is no contradiction in taking that Shesha or Vishnu holds the world on his head, because he thinks that it is a realm of influence that Vishnu takes in a subtle body rather than a literal thousand-headed being that holds it up. Parameshwara takes the view that these are meditative models that are given, because in Bhagavatam the cosmology is related to the world as a Purusha, the body of the universe as a Purusha, right? And after that, Sukha is telling about the cosmology. So it's related with the meditation also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very important. That what King Kong indicated, because a couple things is, first, obviously, this idea that the physical descriptions, let's say in the Puranas, found about Earth being surrounded by lake, oceans of honey and milk, and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't know if even the authors of those texts believe that was the case, right? I think what they're trying to do is a couple things. Is one is provide descriptive visualizations for us, because there are limitations of what we can and can't see, right? Like, did they really think there was a ocean of milk and honey? I'm not sure. I was not in their mind, but I do think they think the water would look like that, right? It would look like, when you look at a wave that is very frothy, it looks milky, right? So they would see that to be the case of, like, okay, space out there is is like water. It's like this, and they present it in descriptive terms, which again goes back to this concepts of, which say Adi Bhautik, Adi Devi, Adhyatmik, right? All three of these registers are playing out when an author is trying to tell the story, right? Or take the truth. Like, here, let's use an example. I think King Kong had brought this up, so let me share this, because I think it's actually is worth engaging with. And this is the story that most people love to argue with, and think is like, this evil, terrible thing in the story of what it is, which is, let's do Ahalya, right? The story of Ahalya. And I think this is, you know, this is in Tantravartika, right? By, again, this is when the story in it occurs in the Mahabharata, but also it's primarily told in the Ramayana, right? Which is this story of Ahalya and Indra having sex, after Ahalya is married to this. Well, the quick connection of the story for listeners, right? Ahalya is the wife of Gautama, who's a sage, and he had left the house, and she was desirous of intercourse, and he had, for some reason, not engaged. Indra, the lord of the devas, saw Ahalya, and she was so beautiful, and he wanted to have her, so he came in the form of Gautama. Now, different traditions approach this differently. What I mean, the story itself, the Ramayana indicates that Ahalya actually knew it was Indra. Other Puranas indicate she didn't know. So if the question is, okay, if she knew or didn't know, is that important? I mean, in some legal sense it is, but maybe not as important for the story. So they do engage in coitus, to use an Oriental term, and then Gautama catches them and curses both of them. So one, Indra is cursed. I think he's cursed to have 1,000 yonis on his body, if I'm not mistaken. And then secondly, he curses Ahalya to become like a stone, right? And there, the later story of the Ramayana has Rama entering. So the later story is like he puts his foot on her, and she actually goes from stone into back to human. But it's interesting because Valmiki doesn't have him do that. Valmiki has him enter the ashrama, and then she becomes visible. So it could be the case that the stories change a little bit, but the basic gist of the story. So now you have, for example, people coming and saying, "Oh, Indra is just like Zeus. Indra is just like these ancient Greek gods, or these other gods that are immoral, that do whatever they want. There's no morality here." Now, the authors of these stories knew full well what they were doing with the storytelling, right? And Kumar Labhatta here gives us the linguistic breakdown of what's happening, right? So, King Kong, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Okay, yeah. So, firstly, I want to give credits to this slide is to Vedic Neon. He is an account. I don't know whether he's active on Twitter or not. He certainly has an article, a blog called "Exposing Hindu Phobes," where he gathers different arguments for the different misinterpretation, like this, for example. So, thanks for that. The lower section is from the English translation of Kumarila Bhatta's Tantravartika. So Tantravartika deals with how the Buddhists are attacking the different, they're trying to gauge different ways of attacking the Vedas, whether through the preservation of the mantras, whether through different immoral, immoral acts, mispronunciation, so on and so forth. So Kumarila deals with, in this case, 2 or 3 incidents. So one being Prajapati Usha or Prajapati, Brahma Saraswati in its Vedic form, Indra Ahalya, Draupadi having 5 husbands, right? So let's deal with the Indra Ahalya thing. So for him, so for Kumarila, in this case, Indra represents the sun, the solar orb, right? Ahalya, Ahor, Aharatri, Aha. So it comes from night. And as Indra is chases after the night, right? Or in through Indra's illicit love, night disappears in the sense that it's not visible, as you said, of Ahalya. Another interpretation, interestingly, coming from Mueller, right? And I wouldn't dismiss it outrightly, because one can make an argument that Ahalya means the unplowed, the Ahalya, right, the one on which the hala is not pulled. It's the unplowed forest land. And Indra is the sky, or even the sun in this case, to be honest, which regulates the water patterns. And then there's the marriage of or the intercourse of the sky father and the earth mother, right? And hence you have these outgrowths, which is kind of in the natural domain of things. But at the same time, these archetypes are also operating in the psychological level, you see. Now, there's a small point that I want to bring up. If we think of these as puzzles, as these mystical koans that these rishis are constructing for the students to understand at how these levels, different levels, these truths are reflecting, they pretty well know that within the structure of the text, Rita or Dharma, or the very moral fabric of the universe, which is the reflection of Brahman, gets the consequences to its perpetrators, right? So let's say for a dumb audience, not dumb, but rather a very, let's say someone who takes this literally, right? These are flesh and blood biological characters. Lest someone takes it to the point that, well, the Devas have done it, therefore I must do it. Within the narratival structure itself, there is this this pushback from Rita that gives consequences to these beings, you see. But right, then when you magnify it to a different level, you see that these acts are happening within the psychological frame of things or within the domain of the physical, you see. And I think Kumarila also takes this view for Prajapati and Ushas, right? One interesting point is Indra is already mentioned as Ahalya Jara in the Brahmanas. So there's a section in the Soma Yagya where there's a litany, there's a mantra called the Subramanya mantra, right? Or the well hymn, right? And Indra is called by different epithets, and he's called as Vrishanashva Mena, right? The lover of Vrishanashva, right? Or the daughter of Vrishanashva, however you want to interpret. And then it comes Ahalya Jara. And there's no much mention of who this Ahalya is. And Kumarila, coming from the Yagya tradition, focuses on that particular aspect of things, right? And the Itihasikas, take this in the domain of psychological, Indra reflecting the restless mind, Ahalya being the restless body that is uniting, and due to that there's a fall of grace. Indra loses his masculinity, his manpower, and then through the yagya, through the going back to the pithers, and through the help of Agni, he regains it. Right? Again, it's a Vedic motive where Indra loses his vigor and the gods come together to install their king. Right? And Rama, I feel Rama's role over here is very interesting. Rama represents a new Indra, a new sun that kind of gets all things, kind of in order, in Rita, right?
Mhm.
As he steps into this domain of Ahalya, being like in this state of limbo, in this state of like unmanifest. By his sheer presence, things get manifested. Things attain their lost luster, right? So we can
And
see
you could
these
also
in
view
different
this
manners.
in a sense of Ahalya representing the lust, right? Desire, desire connected with Indra, right? And that action of the jiva, Ahalya being like a jiva type figure, right? The self and Indra, because Indra is connected normally to what the panch indriyas, the manas, these things that pull the jiva away, right? Causing the senses connecting with jiva and the self being pulled away from to material things, right? To the effects of the mind. Well, Gautama represents that spiritual like wisdom and discrimination, right? Because he's Gau means cow, usually representing like a highest
Light,
level,
dawn rays,
right?
rain, nectar.
Correct, like a light. So it's a turn away from light or the spiritual pursuits to the physical pursuit of the indriyas, the manas, right? And that causes her to become unseen, frozen, like fixed, like a stone. And in that moment, she becomes like we are, Jada. She's merely playing out the world around her because the fixation's on the materiality of things. The presence of Rama comes to undo that, right? Rama comes in as the divine light that of consciousness and awareness that opens up Ahalya back to her true nature and lets her see and be seen as the jiva itself, right? So this is like also the interpretive framework brought to bear here, right? Because the characters each represent that. Ahalya, the unfurrowed, becomes stone like. The story itself gives you that. And the meaning of the names give you that too, right? Rama, that delights, the one who delighted, right? So it's in the engagement with Ramachandra and that being seen by Ramachandra and being entered by Rama entering the forest, or the story goes, the other versions where touching her with his foot brings her back to her jiva nature of being in union with Ishvara, right? So it's actually beautifully done, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, anyone, the Aitare Upanishad is a very short Upanishad, and I think in the third Adhyaya, there's coincidentally, or maybe not, it talks about the Supreme Brahman entering into the Purusha or
Yeah,
entering into the body of the Purusha, the entire conglomerate of the material worlds. And he enters and he sees himself, and he's awestruck that I am this man, like this is so beautiful. He's caught by his own beauty, and the Advaitins would take this as the jiva, right?
yeah,
He's in Maya, seeing himself. The Vishishtadvaitin can take this as Ishvara in the self, as the monitor of the jiva, right?
yeah. Antaryami.
Yeah, and jiva also reflecting its Ishwaraness in a certain way, it being a small portion, a token, a baby Ishwara. And
Right.
it says that idam dra, right? That idam means this, dra drishyati, that
Yeah.
I saw all of this, and hence, he's named idam dra. But the gods call him as Indra.
Indra.
And
Yeah.
then it says that the gods love what's the cryptic? Paroksha priyavai devaha, right? That paroksha, which is not pratyaksha, which is hidden, which is
Hidden. Yeah.
concealed, which is cryptic. And the gods love this. Because the gods want to conceal their mysteries in these cryptic forms. And you see, this is within the text, by the way. This is not something that is being imported from a different tradition to explain away these things, right? This is a natural growth within the poetics, the dramatics, and the mysticism infused in the ritual gazing of the world, from which these hermeneutics are born.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and this is where it's like, I think if you want to engage with the Hindu tradition honestly, and not like these Dawa bros, these idiots that do that, who just look and because that's how they read their text, right? They read their text very superficially and like straightforward, right? Oh, it says Muhammad did XYZ. Muhammad must have done XYZ. Now, I think it's interesting that for example, what's it called? The Ismailis and others will take a more esoteric approach to it, and maybe that's because they're influenced a lot by Vedantic thought and especially the ones in India. So they'll take. And they're also influenced by Neoplatonism to say things like, Muhammad is like the first is what the news? No, he's not. Is he news or the world mind or something like that? Right. So,
The news,
anyways,
the news.
the
He
news.
is the reflection of the first intellect.
Yes.
The
If on
news,
Ibn
right?
Arabi's tradition, it will be Noor-e Muhammadiyah, the light of Muhammad, and in the case for the Ismailis, it would be the light of the Imamat. It's like this pre-eternal kind of manifestation of this knowledge, sentient entity, which is just the first emanation of God, Allah.
Yeah.
The first intellect. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so anyways, the point to that was like within their tradition on the whole, and there's different traditions there, they don't deal with nuance very well, correct? So for them, everything, whatever's written on paper is exactly what it is. For us, no, the writing reflects something, but there's a deeper truth and there's something to churn and bring, which is why this, like for example, when they say, the Gita is the churned butter of the Upanishads, and Krishna is like the cowherd, and Arjuna is a vatsa. These kind of like these images, these metaphors, these similes, analogies. They're all meant to get us to think deeper about this, right? The story is the first way to bring us in. This is always the case. The story brings us in. It's interesting. It's emotionally connected, and then the idea is you go deeper into a particular story, and that story elucidates Adi Devik, Adhyatmik, Adi Yagnik, Adi Bautik, right? This is complete. It's a complete human endeavor. So here's a question from Utanka, or a statement. So I think he was asking about, story. Why can't we take the story as it is? I understand we modern Hindus take Plato like offense when we see gods doing immoral acts, but shouldn't we also question what we consider moral and immoral? Go ahead, Vinit.
I mean, so in my whatever that I have debated with the Muslims or other faiths, whenever they would bring this up, this would be my response. So, I mean, we can take this view, this way of dealing with these issues. We can go into the esoteric and trying to unravel, as King Kong said, the crypticness that gods have inserted in these texts. But if we want to get the job done in a very smoother manner, or rather in a more quicker manner, then my way used to be to just say that gods with small g are jivas like us who occupy these extraterrestrial realms, and they can make errors, they can commit papas, and they would also be judged as the other jivas are judged on our terrain, or on our level. So, what do you guys think about such approaches? Can we? I mean, he has also mentioned, why do we take Plato like offense? So, uh, just to comment a bit on that. So, Plato had this stigma with these
Greek
uh,
gods.
poets,
Yeah.
yeah, poets of that time, where he said these poets should be, uh, you know, s- uh, being attached to a tree. They should be flogged and whipped because of writing such things about the gods. So, are we taking a similar kind of stance here? Are we getting also offended by these texts, or no? There's like genuine inquiry that should be done.
Yeah. So I mean,
So, yeah.
yeah, I was going to say. So I think you can have all these perspectives. They're all equally true. So again, you can say that from the literal reading of the text, let's say the Adi Bautik reading, in there's action was sexual relationships with a woman that was married, and this is a consequence of his desire and his immoral action. Therefore, he's punished. by the, and again, you can view it a couple ways. One, this is karma itself playing through. Even the gods are not free from consequences of their actions. This karma is higher than all the deities, right? So there's that element we could take. Two, you could say, well, the action itself is wrong. He was cursed, she was cursed, and then there was, even though these immoral actions occur, Vishnu in his infinite grace still gives, you know, you know, what's it called, salvation and penance or whatever it is, cleansing, right? He's infinite compassion. There's that element. There's also the element we talked about, which is going to be your Adidevic and Adhyatmic that we discussed earlier. They're all equally true. So the point is, like, we're not saying that you pick one or the other, or that you can't look at it from a immoral might and question the morality of actions, right? We should, because these are moral stories. None of these stories, by the way, you don't have a situation where, you know, like, for example, in the Old Testament, God kills all of Jericho and tells Joshua to, you know, or commits genocide, or does, or you know, he unleashes plagues on Egypt, and nothing happens to God. Nothing happens to God. In our tradition, again, everything these gods do, every little thing these gods do, there's some consequence. Even Krishna, you know, he says in the Gita himself, you know, there's nothing I have to do, but I do it because otherwise this world doesn't go on. You know, and then yet achari shreshtaha tattadeva itaro janaha. Right? He follows his own rules, not because the rules bind him, but because he is setting an example. Karma plays. We have to. These things play out. So Krishna commits an action of lying or violence, whatever it is. And what happens? He suffers the consequences out of his desire, of his own will. That doesn't happen in the Abrahamic world. God doesn't suffer any consequences. He could do whatever he wants. So in other words, the dilemma of Euthyphro dilemma, it doesn't exist for us, right? It exists for the Christian God because his actions don't curtail with the morals that he presents. In our system, yes, God might do negative actions, but there's a moral framework that he still lets himself be controlled by. But the devas are always controlled by. So these are the ways I would approach this, right? Like, ultimately, I think, you know, that's a much stronger position, because we can argue each of these different perspectives in a way that's way more satisfactory than the Christian and Muslim can do with their tradition, right? The best that happens, by the way, in the Christian tradition is like Isaiah and the book of Daniel being retold in the story of Jesus, right? This is somewhat similar, like Jesus becoming the Lamb of God, the Son of Man, that's spoken about in the Old Testament, and you know, who's, or you know, for example, every Christian loves to talk about the Psalms, the suffering servant Isaiah passages that reflects, you know, well, the original text was talking about Israel. Christians reinterpret this to talk about Christ. This is Christ being foretold in the text to be the suffering servant that will, be killed. So they do somewhat of this stuff, but it's not very well done, I think, in the biblical sense, the way that the Hindu tradition has it built into its very core, that everything that is said in these texts can be viewed and is viewed linguistically differently. In this sense, a moral framework, a cosmic framework, and an internal, like, spiritual framework. Yeah, go ahead, King Kong. I interrupted you.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Let's first talk about Plato a bit. There's a certain kind of like, let's say, a view that Plato abhors these stories about these deities or these heroes or daimons doing immoral acts or lying and stuff. Now, Plato is writing a plethora of literature where he doesn't really give his own particular view. He places, or he shows to different characters maybe different views that he held at different points in his life, maybe certain views of the same characters. But it's more of like placing a certain dialogue in front of you and trying to parse certain things out, or give a certain kind of aporia question for the reader to solve. Now, Plato, this thing about Plato not liking about these gods and the nature of the gods being simple, and Zeus not sending a lying dream to Agamemnon in Iliad and stuff, this happens in the Republic. In the Republic, Plato does say that we should be aware. So rather, his concern is that to whom are these stories reaching to? Right? He's not against the fact that these are taken in certain mystery cults, like the Eleusinian mystery or the Orphic mysteries, and there are people interpreting it in a different manner. For example, the story of Hades and Persephone, abduction of Persephone. His question or his concern is that lest this message be misunderstood. And within this framework, people think that as he was averse to certain depiction of the deities within the realm of the poets or the dramatists, he somehow was absolutely kind of a Puritan regarding the view of the gods. But no, he in his, I think, Meno does talk about when the soul recollects, it joins the gods, and the gods over there are like Zeus, Artemis, Athena, and they have this huge train of beings which we would call as Avarana Devas, on of whose part the soul becomes, right? It's similar to the soul going to Shivaloka or to Vishnaloka and stuff. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is we see the same thing, and then as Plato lays the foundation, we slowly see that the Neoplatonists like Plutarch, or even the Middle Platonists, later Proclus, Sallustius, they understand or they interpret Plato in that framework, that these myths are told for the initiated one. It's a koan in a sense. And I would suggest the person who put this question to read Sallustius and to others also, because it would give you a broad perspective of how myths are interpreted in the greater Indo-European framework. And he says that the entire cosmos is a poetry. It's an artwork, and the gods deliberately reveal some things and conceal some things, right? Depending upon what grade of level of spiritual realization you are. Vinit can link this with the Madhva idea or the Tattvavada idea that the Puranas are written in different levels of language, Sandhya Bhasha and other bhashas. So, we sometimes think of these myths in a very, let's say, constricted manner due to a certain lens of looking. Hesiod in his text in the works, I think in the Work and Days, or I think in Theogony, gives a very beautiful line which he prays to the muses, and the muses say that, poet, be aware, we can reveal and we can conceal things, right? We can talk in riddles. Having said that, I would agree with Vinny that with a opponent or with an interlocutor who doesn't have the patience or doesn't have the charitability for you to engage in this depth, we can go directly into the devas can be flawed beings, and the beauty is in the flawedness, that even they fall. So what about us? Sometimes the stories are also said in that manner. Look at Brahma, sure. Look at Indra, right? So one small point. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No. I was just, the only thing I was going to say is, but that's the nature of Prakriti, right? All the gods, devas, are within Prakriti, right? So Prakriti is this reflection of all possibilities, right? Good, bad, ugly, whatever. And that exists within the deities too. And the deities themselves are not pure sattva, are not pure rajas, are not pure tamas. They have higher preponderance of those things, but they're still bound by those things, right? So yeah, I mean, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think we can also take, let's say, a certain Tattvavada position and expand upon it. Vinit, if you want to add, please do. The fact that we don't, so we can take the point that there are certain devas, or in certain kalpas, in certain manvantaras, there are Indras that might do this. But from a different view, these deities are playing out a certain narrative, a certain drama. They know what's going to happen, what are their roles, how the script's going to play out, right? And in that manner, the deities take self-inflict in a certain way within the dramatical or within the narrative scheme of things, these consequences or pushback from Rita, to show that lest you mortal do something like this, you're going to get the same thing. But if you see this story that we have enacted in front of you kids in a deeper manner, then you will see how other deeper truths are embedded in these. Right. So, Sallustius, or even taking, for example, let's say Matsya Purana. Matsya Purana ponders upon the story of Brahma and Saraswati, and over here Matsya is telling this story when the world is flooded to Manu, and Manu is in shock, right? That there's a deluge, and suddenly Vishnu says this thing about Brahma. What's going on? And Vishnu is like, no, don't take it literally. And there's a literal, people think that literal and metaphor means somehow it's just poetic and there's nothing more to it. Therefore, I don't want to use the word metaphor. I think it's how different levels of these activities of deities are conversed through different languages. So Vishnu says that Brahma and Saraswati is united in this one monadic structure where Brahma is the word and Saraswati is its meaning. Brahma is the Veda, Saraswati is the Chanda. Brahma is the sun, Saraswati is the light. You can think of also it in your own psyche. Brahma is your mind. Manas is Brahma, and Saraswati is Vak. It's the linguistic structure that arrives in your mind. So it is both a duhita. Duhita literally means that which is milked out, that which is drawn forth, like in a sense a daughter, but in also sense when it combines together to create more things, it becomes its wife, right? So yeah, Vinit, you wanted to say something?
No, that was a lengthy and a thorough explanation from your side. Just to add something similar we see in the Christian world. You mentioned about the Greek world, how they interpret it in a similar way, and how Madhvacharya has, I think, he has mentioned in Mahabharata Tatparya that the Mahabharata has 8 layered interpretations, not even 2, not even 3, 8 layered interpretations. So each of the shlokas can be potentially interpreted in 8 ways. Not for us, but as you go above in the realm of the devas, the level of interpretation increases. So they can see through the text in more ways than we can see. Just to add to the point that you said about crypticness, and also in Christian tradition, this was a shock for me. uh, Dante, I guess, is the first one where in the Western world, in the non Greco-Roman world, should I say, where you see the scriptural hermeneutics starting. So it starts from Dante, where he brings in these 3 layers of interpretations, and he takes the inspiration from Paul's letter, where Paul has it written that the word kills, the spirit saves. So, meaning if you become literal about and the reason why he had to do this is because Christians who were from Greece, they were going back to Plato, they were going back to these philosophers and trying to incorporate their ideas in Christianity, all while interpreting Christian theology. So a lot of the Orthodox saints, they rebuked them. They were like, no, why are you taking ideas from the pagans? Why are you taking ideas from the Greek works? To this, they replied that it is in the letters of the Paul, where it is basically it's kind of insinuated that do not go for the literal, but go for the spiritual. So word kills, the spirit saves. If you are literal, then that's you're going on the wrong track. If you're spiritual, then you can get better of what the gods of these pagan religions have said or what is there in the pagan texts. So this is quite late compared to our tradition, and it is also something that's coming from like the date between Christ and the initial saints and Dante's of 1,000 years. That there's a 1,000 year gap. In our case, this has been part and parcel since the beginning of the Vedic tradition. We have been taught to see the text in a multi-layered form, be it Bhagavad Gita, be it Mahabharata, be it Vedas, and that comes handy as we just saw, where the questionnaire had proposed how about we see it on a more adi bhautika level, and Mukunda replied that yes, if you see it on a adi bhautika level, then you can say that the devas have committed an error. If you see it on adi devika level, the interpretation changes. It becomes more metaphorical. Instead of error, it becomes as you said, the poetry is encoded in the entire universe, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think going back to King Kong's point around now I forget what were you saying. Last thing you said, King Kong.
Last thing, the fact that
About
these entities.
speech. Yeah,
Yeah,
about speech and Brahma and all these, and that's right. Like if you do such a very basic understanding of the nature of, say, Brahma and Saraswati, the story of Brahma creates Saraswati and then he desires her, and then so that occurs. If you take that literally, then you're going to get this story that seems at its face immoral from the get-go. And then but what you end up having is a story of also in that context of Rudra's actions, right? Because then the story themselves is seen as immoral at some level, at one level, right? Not Indra, Rudra, in the response to Brahma's desiring Saraswati, cuts off his own head, cuts off one of Brahma's 5 heads. And then that action leads Rudra to be outside the ritual to get remnants, right? So this is explanation for the deities at one level. The second level is just like King Kong indicated, which is if you consider Brahma to be Prajapati, the one who produces things, and he produces not only things but speech and thought, then the first thought that comes, is Vak, and that Vak he uses, he has intercourse within that sense to create more language, more verse, more creativity, right? So this is you you have to step outside simple literal readings of things.
Yeah. Couple of points. So Vinit, I think Mukunda, you can correct me. The hermeneutical tradition of interpreting the Christian Old Testament or the New Testament in a metaphorical manner, in seeing the days of Genesis as these different psychological or structures of reality that are different realms, not literally. It comes from Philo of Alexandria, right? And Philo is around
But he's not
100 Yeah.
Christian, right? He is Jewish. So
So
Yeah,
so Philo would act as a conduit for such
sure.
hermeneutics to enter into the Judeo-Christian world, and then we see it in Origen of Alexandria, Gregory of Nyssa, even in certain areas of Augustine. But you do see a very strong impact of seeing these myths from the Neoplatonic worldview that has permeated into the Judeo-Christian worldview. Not to say that the Bible don't have structures of speech and metaphors, but the level of interpretation that the Greco-Roman Platonists or Neoplatonists or the Middle Platonists were using, that strongly influenced the Christian tradition to take that.
So I think
Yeah.
Origen is the first to develop this. If I'm not mistaken, I know that I think Tertullian or Irenaeus, I forget which one, against heresies, it was Irenaeus, right? So he attacks some of the other Christian people for not interpreting the text correctly and not approaching the text properly and being. I think he talks about bifurcating the text and how people view it, and I think it was Origen, if I'm not mistaken, that does present the first major idea of a literal meaning, a moral meaning, and a spiritual meaning of the text. So, but again, that's outside of the text themselves, right? He has to impose it into the text or onto the text because the text itself doesn't give him the framework in order to how to read the text itself. Whereas I think within the Hindu framework, when I'm saying like Itihasa, Purana, those and the Veda themselves gives you the framework, right? It gives you the tools within the text.
Yeah, so there's a certain slide, I think just after the Adidayavika one, there's a certain excerpt. It's from Nirukta. Now,
okay, yeah, I'll pull. Is this about the Vitra Indra?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let me.
So I want to, bring up Vinit's point that where Madhvacharya said that Mahabharata is interpreted in different realms according to the level of cognition that these deities or these entities have. This is actually not something Madhvacharya, himself, constructed as a hermeneutical approach. This is within the tradition of the Vulgate of Mahabharata, where it said that in the realm of the Pitars, the Mahabharata is manifested in this number of sloka, maybe 2
Yeah.
lakhs. In the realm of the Gandharvas, Narada teaches it. In the realm of the Rakshasas, Asita teaches it, and so on and so forth. Even if I take the critical edition version, even in the first chapter, if you read it, it is said that Vyasa cognized this Mahabharata. He saw this, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a certain sense that it is with subtle meanings, shukshma artha, right? So what Madhvacharya or Ramanuja or the Nilakanta Chaturdhara is doing is basically parsing out these clues that are there. So this is from Nirukta. Now, why take Nirukta? Yashka is around 700, Mukunda, correct me, I think 600, 700 BCE.
Yeah, I mean, people usually put around 600, but yeah, let's say that.
Let's take that. So that's like around,
Well, they say 6th century.
800.
They say
Yeah,
6th century, so I think
right.
they mean like 500 BCE, somewhere around there.
500 BC or 600 BC, right?
Yeah.
So and Yashka is compiling the Nirghantu, right, which has these are collection of homonyms and synonyms, right? And then there's also his elucidation of the grammatical structures and what are the meanings, right? Yashka notes an entire tradition before him of different grammarians and different grammar schools and etymological schools and hermeneutical schools. So this goes back, right? So if Yashka is in 600 BC, it goes back at least 200, 300 years. Let's give that. So this is an excerpt from his text, and it says that, this is from the Rig Veda. The deposited body was in the midst of water, which neither stay nor rest. Water march against the secret outlet of Vritra. In deep darkness lay he whose enemy is Indra. So this is from the Rig Veda. The deposited body. So Vritra takes it, i.e., the cloud was in the midst of water, which neither stay nor rest. Waters which are non-stationary, so it's moving. Sharira is so he gives the etymological root of Sharira, right? And he goes on to say that it is a cloud, say the etymologist, right? The Nairuktins. It is a demon son of Twashta, say the legendarians, which would be the Aitihasikas. The phenomena of rain is produced by commingling of water and the lightning. With reference to this, there are figurative description of battle. Indeed, the description of Vedic stanzas and the narratives of the Brahmanas, no doubt, as a serpent, by expanding his body, he blocked the channels of the rivers. When he was killed, water flowed forth. So Indra splits apart the cloud, the megha, and the water droplets are released. The nectar is released, and after the cloud clears, you have the sun and the ray cows, which is the rays of the sun that moves on. Right. The following is the stanza which explains this. So you see, from such a early view within the Brahmana tradition, within the and from which rises the Nirukta tradition, it is encoded. It's somehow given in the tradition that such would be the levels of interpretation that is within this sacred text. Yeah.
But this is because, frankly, and the Hindu mind for thousands of years was so grammar oriented, right? This idea that we can ascertain meaning and understanding through grammar, nirukta in this case, right? Which is not grammar but etymology, is it's almost unheard of even in the Christian tradition, because the Christian first of all, the Christian tradition struggles with a couple of things. Is, let's say, first you start off with their text, the Old Testament's originally written in Hebrew or some sort of Hebrew, and then it gets translated into Greek as a Septuagint, and then like all the New Testament is written in the Iconic Greek, but there's maybe a good portion that maybe it came out of Aramaic because it shows some linguistic issues. So they have a much more difficult time to figure out their textual tradition than this one, because we have the ability for our scholars to sit and understand words. But this is also the important part here, which is in this entire thing that you just read out, all three are seen as equally valid. All three are seen as talking about the same thing, but in different ways, right? And by the same thing, meaning the same underlying phenomenon described adibautic, adhyatmic, and Devic in that sense, right? And the fact that he can also say, like, for example, like, this is just a weird tangent for me, but I'll say this: the idea of waters and the cloud is interesting because we talk about today atmospheric rivers, right? These these flowing of the atmosphere that is condensed with water, condensed with moisture. That when you hit a certain level of humidity or lightning causes it, there is rain, right? So this is actually pretty cool. Just reading this, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and there's I mean, we focus on Indra, Vitra, Indra, Halya, Prajapati, and Ushas, you know, but let's take Vishnu, right? So Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Suraya, right? This hymn in the Mandala 1. I didn't have the time to clip it, but you will certainly find it in Nirukta, where Yashka takes that the etymologists take Vishnu as the sun, right? Now, it doesn't mean, or it doesn't make it meaningless that you're worshipping a insentient entity. Why? Because within the Nirukta and in the larger tradition, it says that the gods can be both invisible, formless, or embodied in form, and the natural bodies can be karmendriyas, or like karma sharira, which they use to operate or control the phenomena. So and this makes sense, because when I'm now remembering that when Vinit asked about the cosmological structure in the Bhagavatam, it is said that when the sun, or the orb of the sun, is being described, it's not the normal sun that you see.
No,
you have an elaborate, huge chariot which is drawn by 7 horses, which both Shayana in his Veda Bhashya and the Bhashyakaras of Bhagavatam commentators have taken as the 7 rays of the sun, the 7 meters of the Vedas, right? The 7 days of the week, right? Then Surya is embodied over there. So this is talking about the different lokas, and Vishnu, being the indweller of the solar orb, can mean both his body as well as he who he is in his essence as Paramatman, as the sun of the world, right, as the light of the world. Because Chandogya goes on to say that being that you see in the orb of the sun is the same end being who is also in your eye pupil, right?
Yes.
And then it binds these two worlds, the microcosm and the macrocosm, in this one thread, which is the body of Ishvara, the body of Narayana, right? And so yeah, you can see this, how it melds and it blends in different levels and different tastes and flavors, and it's pretty interesting how you can literally build stuff out of it and see that how it connects.
Yeah, you remember also in the, I think, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it goes through all these elements: lightning, the sun, who the sun does not know, who's behind the sun, who this, and then it goes into the eye, it goes into describing each element in a way to show that the same thing that's sitting there is sitting here, right? That the sun himself doesn't know, this doesn't know, that doesn't know. So this entire movement in the Upanishads to describe the nature of not just seeing a thing as a thing, but seeing what is beyond it, the power beyond it, the energy beyond it, the cosmological principle behind it, right? Like this idea of Surya driving a chariot with the 7 rays and 7 horses, that is the cosmological vision of Surya, not the physical vision of Surya, right? That same sun is possessed of this nature because the cosmological Surya exists. All suns possess that nature because the underlying sun, the sun of the suns, the origin of the suns is Surya, right? So in that sense, what we're essentially saying is Surya is the meta Surya, from which all Suryas derive from, extend from, and they possess the nature of this Surya because he is the source of that Surya, or these other Suryas.
Yeah, and taking the Vaishnava or the Shaiva perspective, then even the deity Surya, or the deities Suryas, who are in these different cosmos, are basically bodies of Surya Narayana or Shiva Surya, right? So as all the names of the devas are nothing but transpirations, emanations of Brahman, as Brahman is the possessor of all the names, the Ekovai Deva Namadha Eka Eva, right? As the Vishwakarma Sukta says, that so it's in a way a father grants his bike or his clothes, to t-shirt to his son, right? And the son embodies in a certain manner.
Right.
And those articles, the paraphernalia, the objects, whether physical or psychical, are also embodiments of Brahman as their extension of him. And there's a certain, and by extension, I certainly don't mean in a physical sense, but in the sense of it reflecting his characteristics. So a small point, someone can ask that why is Indra, why is Agni, or why is Prajapati, being shown in this manner if it's a metaphor for a mind or something like that? As these tanmatras, as these psychical states of realities and the physical states are under the governance of these entities, therefore the entities through these methods of the story are telling us about, or rather teaching us about, the propensities present in these things, right? So Indra as the slayer of Vritra shows that how the mind can overcome the ignorance or the jara or the tamas of ahamkara, right? But in the case of Ahalya, it shows that what the mind can do if it goes rogue. And as Indra presides over the mind, Indra is teaching that, look, these things can happen. And I'm being the placeholder of the mind. I'm taking the placeholder of the jiva in this movie.
But to that point, it goes back to what we were talking about much earlier. That's the cosmological principle that plays out every day within us. So Indra himself, every single time we fall prey to our senses, Indra is falling prey to our senses. When we rise above our ahankara, Indra is rising above ahankara. That same truth is playing out constantly, every second, every day within us. So it's not to say that it's merely a metaphor. This is actually what's happening.
Yeah, I think metaphor is a very, people use it very easily in these discourses. Oh, it's a metaphor, as if it's like this. It's nothing more beyond than just a symbol, inscribed or just a poetry written. No, what we mean to say it's a metaphor is, it's basically, metaphor means metafere, right? To transfer over.
Yeah.
And this principle reflects itself, or these acts reflect itself in different syntax and grammar in different levels of reality, right? And that's what it's being said in something proximate to the human experience, something which you can understand, grasp within that grammar, right? And as the initiate extends or advances in his journey, so much so the Vedas open itself up, because we must remember within the Vedas there's also a mantra, I think in Mandala 9, that he who thinks, or those who think they have drunk the soma and they have tasted the true soma haven't. Only the Brahmana knows what's the true soma, right? So it's hearkening back that don't think of the principle of soma being kind of constricted by Amanita muscaria or ephedra. It's just not that. It's more than that, right? It's the principle that acts through that ritual substance of the soma to kind of invoke the mental soma, the mind in you, right? So it's kind of like trying to shake the reader that there are 4 stages of speech, there are 4 parts of speech. Humans only speak with one leg of it, right? The other 3 are hidden. So the Vedas are already kind of aware of the fact that what it's trying to say and how concealed it is and to what level. And I think Itihasas and Puranas also take the same tradition forward. Will that be the resurrection of Ganesha, or the entire dynamism of Naranarayana as Arjuna Krishna? Because you see the same thing, Mukunda, that Indra fails. Indra is afraid.
Naranarayana, Krishna, Arjuna. Yeah, it plays out.
Indra is afraid. Arjuna is afraid. He's anxious, right? He can't face the battlefield, his own people. He can't face Deus, right?
Yeah.
And Vishnu is like, I'm with you as Krishna. Hanuman is on his chariot. Vayu helps Indra.
Who's also Rudra.
There's Rudra. The entire Maruts, who are the Panchala army. Yeah. And by the way, Madhvacharya in his Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya brings this out, that how the dimensionality that is happening in the level of the Devas are playing out on the mortal plane. So we really gloss over the Dvaita tradition and the other hermeneutic tradition just for Aham Brahmasmi and we are one and we have got the entire cherry of things. But these are so small things that can help you understand and kind of broaden your view, even if you're agnostic or
But
non-theist
this,
or somewhere in the border regions of faith,
so
right?
this is where, and I think Vinny, you could jump in after this, is because I also know you have to go soon, so and we could close up. But I will say this is also my issue with a lot of Hindus that talk about Hindu stuff. They don't know any of this. Not a single freaking thing about this stuff, right? Like when they talk to Muslims or Christians or talk about their traditions, they know none of this, right? It's just, oh, these are just stories. They just don't, we don't need to pay attention. No, you have to pay attention to these stories. They're not just random things that people threw in just to throw in. They're the when we say know the Shastras, I'm not saying like you have to memorize this. It's understand what they're trying to tell us, what the authors, because it's not a simple story put in for a random place or random time. So a lot of times you hear this is what I see is, oh, you don't have to worry about all these stories. It's really just Upanishads and it's just the know thyself. No, shut up. That's one element. This is an entire 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, or whatever you want to call tradition of amazing thinkers and poets and rishis that have put together one of the most comprehensive ways to think about the world, both physically, spiritually, psychologically, cosmically. I mean, I don't know a single tradition that can do it like this. Not even close. And in fact, they have to do that with the Greeks after they learned about the Hindu stuff, right? Once you now, like, Greek scholars will be like, yeah, well, Zeus actually represents this, because you're applying the same thing that the Hindus did for thousands of years, right? And I think this is, and I'll be very clear, and I think it's like, again, this is why I think we're all doing this, is at some level there's too many idiot, and I don't mean to be rude, but like uneducated moronic Hindus that go out and like to talk about Hinduism, and just stop trying to build clout, stop trying to build the presence. Like, you have to spend a lifetime to learn this, and I don't even know half this stuff. That's why we're all here together. We all bring knowledge from each other that we don't each have, and I think this kind of engagement is what's really going to drive like people learning about our tradition more and more and more. Because to simply answer, well, you don't have to, like, even the like Raslila, or Raslila, people are like, oh my god, that's just like, you don't have to, it's just metaphoric. No, it's not. What is the Rasalila? What is the nature of that entire thing? The nature of Krishna and the gopis? Like, it is erotic, but why is it not erotic? Any relationship within two beings that desire each other in such a deep level, Atma, Jivatma, Paramatma, it's going to have eroticism involved. It is. And it's not merely erotic, but it's because it overwhelms you when you're in a state of like pure desire that way. And the whole idea of, this, the rasas in this context, right? Whether you talk Madhurya Bhava, Sringara, all these other things that are playing out, like, it's not simple just to say, oh, this is, you don't have to think about this, or it's not worth engaging in. These are just stories. Ramayana is just a story. Mahabharata is just a story. They're not just stories. Yes, they are stories, but not just stories the way like we talk about a story. They are the story of all of us. Like this, even the way King Kong, you talked about Indra being, defeating Vritra or falling to Ahalya. Those are stories, but they're what we live every day. Right? I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Indra is God making, right? Indra is always in this process of apotheosization, right? He's failing, and then even in Kaushitaki Brahmana, Indra gains Brahma Vidya from Prajapati, from Uma Haimavati in Kenopanishad. You can treat her as Vak, you can treat her as Lakshmi also, or even as Vishnu's power and Shiva's power, however you see this, whichever sampradaya you choose. I think, Uttanka, exactly. Karpadin Shiva does help the Pandavas in fighting of the Kauravas, and Arjuna. I think it's in Drona Parva or Karna Parva, where Arjuna has this profound vision suddenly in the battlefield while he's fighting, where there's this description of this humongous gargantuan being with three eyes eating away all things. And it's crazy. It's very scary. Think about the entire day you're fighting, and suddenly you have this vision, right? Arjuna is like, every time Arjuna meets with Mahadeva, it's kind of not a very pleasant in a modern sense, or in a
No,
day-to-day sense of
he,
term.
he meets with Kirata and he gets his butt. Sorry for my French, but he gets his ass kicked. They say that like he had Shiva had beaten him into like looking like a massive lump of flesh, and then
Yeah,
he had
he's like a beaten pulp, right? He's beaten
yeah,
blue and black, and
which
somehow
is
it's like it's Shiva's way of kind of cleansing Arjuna, right?
yeah.
It's preparation. It's like heating the sword in the fire, hammering it hard. As Rudra has tough love for people, right? He does that. And I would also suggest. So there are two suggestions, and I would wrap up. So recently there was this. We can probably continue upon this on elaborate in some other stream,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
There was
Yeah,
a recent video by Nityananda Mishra that talks about pseudoscience, right,
yeah.
as peddled by different neo gurus, pop gurus,
Oh
and stuff
God.
like that. And I agree with most of, and I absolutely agree with him that what kind of problem and issues that are brought self-made by the Hindu community to somehow make the Vedas being the reservoir of all
Vibrations,
material
vibrations.
sciences. Yeah, vibrations, right? Ohm is equal to mc square. But so he does bring about this, the idea of the cosmology in the Puranas, that it's not matching with our physical one. And probably I'm thinking it's due to the brevity of time he couldn't expand on that. We did it today, that how tradition sees that. If anyone wants to further read about it, I would suggest you jiva.org. It's a Gaudiya Vaishnava traditional site. It's run by it's under Satyanarayan Das Babaji, right? So over there, there are two beautiful articles on how to see Jambu Dvipa, the celestial islands and stuff. And moreover, what is the goal of Bhagavatam? Is the Bhagavatam over here to teach you cosmology, or is the Bhagavatam trying to teach you Krishna and give you hints how to see the entire cosmos in a poetic manner embedded in Krishna's essence, love, body, right? So that would be it. And, interestingly, Arya Bhatta is, Vinit, we have this conversation, right, in our clubhouse days and all. Arya Bhatta is absolutely invoking Vishnu and Lakshmi when he's writing his text and all, and he just doesn't accept literally that Rahu is this uh, monster that eats away the lunar or the solar orbs, but he does use the word Rahu because for him the lunar node or the different nodes, right, that
Mhm.
causes the eclipse are like these physical phenomenal bodies that these entities possess, through which it guides or causes these phenomena. So we see that even Brahmagupta and Bhaskara, when they're dealing with the tradition, they are not atheists. They are not denying the gods. They know what's the domain of the Puranas are and what's the domain of astronomy is, right? And they don't want to mix that, because you have bad theology and bad astronomy if you do that, right? Everything becomes like, Indra is electricity, Agni is hermic power. Basically, Vedas talk about every damn thing but Ishvara. That's what we go to if we follow that path.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is hits the nail on the head, right? It's I mean, Nityananda Mishra is great that way. He does a lot of pushback and engagement with the tradition and showing how people like Nilesh and Lekantok and a bunch of these people are just crazy people without grounding. He's just saying stuff to basically say, look how great our civilization is. But again, I'm like, you don't have to make things up and be unscientific or uncritical thinking, non-critical thinking to show how great it is, because it is. It stands its own 2 feet. Just spend the time, do the work, read people like Yaska, read commentaries on these texts, and yeah, you're gonna find some stuff you don't agree with, other stuff you don't. But on the whole, absolutely, this is pretty amazing work and intellectually fulfilling, spiritually fulfilling, psychologically fulfilling. I do think people should spend more time trying to understand what these stories are not just literally saying, but what they're intending to say, and what their import is, not just for the story itself, but for cosmological philosophical, conscious oriented, and then internal psychological oriented kind of structures, because they all are doing that.
Yeah, it's just a couple of few references for the viewers. You can read Aurobindo for Mahabharata and its connection with the Vedas. I would suggest, and Mukunda has also done podcast with Joydeep Bakshi on this channel.
Yeah.
You can read their work. Vishwal Dui and Joydeep Bakshi lectures are also available on YouTube. Those are very information loaded. I think it's done through Indica.
Yeah,
Even
I'm gonna have him back on the
yeah.
podcast soon, actually.
Great, great. That would be really nice. And even Professor Butler, right? Edward Butler, he's a practicing polytheist as well as an academician in polytheistic, outlook metaphysics. He has a very good lecture on how to interpret Greco-Roman myths, which is actually the platform is of Indicas. And the reason why I'm saying is that I think Hindus should also, or even the Indic tradition, followers of Indic tradition, should have a much more broader knowledge of how other polytheistic traditions sees their stories also, because you will see a similar pattern, whether it is historical or a psychical connection that all human beings preeminently has, and it would help seeing your traditions better, right? So that I would suggest that too. Mukunda, if you have any, yeah.
No, I think that's it. I think that's good. I hopefully this stream, guys, helped you guys think about the Shruti Smriti reality, these ways we think about Adi Devik, Adhyatmik, Adi Bautik, and even Adi Yagnik. And if you have any comments, please drop a line. Check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn. I mean, not LinkedIn, X, in Google, whatever. Anything else, King Kong?
No, I think that would be it.
Yeah.
We can probably go delve into the deeper portions and more esoteric links later in a different stream. Maybe we can bring the Mahabharata and Ramayana and then analyze those. So yeah, for tonight this would be it. Thank you, Mukunda. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys. And Vinit had to jump off. He had some work stuff. So thank him for joining us. This is great. This is kind of what we've been needing. So thank you guys. Hopefully we get more and more listeners, guys, or viewers. I think, frankly speaking, this is partially my ego, partially I think the team we have here talking. I think it's worth people that are interested in our traditions or Hinduism or to jump on and engage. Indica has great content. Actually, Brahat does too. So I would also view them. But there's very few and far between Hindu dharmic channels out there that will discuss this stuff. So cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks, King Kong.
All right, Mukunda, have a great week ahead.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night,
May the gods bless all of us.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
पावन मुनिजन यमुना तीरे पावन मुनिजन यमुना तीरे गायती वनमाली गायती वनमाली मधुरम गायती वनमाली